when we see suffering and when we see crimes being perpetrated by certain groups against the rest of the world, how do we approach that problem? How do we engage it? Today, you can see in many parts of the world where similar things are happening, where people are very determined to advance their agenda and to exterminate, physically destroy anyone who opposes them. We can look at communism, we can look at other ideologies that are very aggressive, that do not want to coexist with anybody, do not want to accept anybody's alternative ideas. They see world in only one way, and anyone who opposes them will be destroyed. So how do we address that? How do we, as the conscious, enlightened human beings, deal with that? What's your advice?
지난 30년 동안 불교를 믿고 있다가 오늘 기독교로 개종을 했다 하는 일이 벌어진다면,
For example, if you're a Buddhist for the last 30 years, then today you just converted to Christianity.
그럼 불교 쪽에서는 나쁜 놈이라고 야단을 할 거고,
Then your fellow Buddhists, former Buddhists, would say you made a mistake.
기독교 쪽에서는 하나님의 품으로 돌아왔다고 환호할 겁니다.
And your church goers, your brothers and sisters, will welcome you into the bosom of the Lord.
반대가 돼도 마찬가지일 거예요.
The same thing will happen in reverse.
이랬을 때 이것을 가지고 우리가 어떤 것을 옳다 그르다 할 수 있겠어요?
So in that situation, we can't really make a judgment of what's right or wrong.
그렇기 때문에 제3자의 눈으로 봤을 때는 옳다 그르다 할 것이 없다는 거예요.
So from a third perspective, from a third party perspective, there's no right or wrong in that situation.
그러나 각자의 자기 입장에서 봤을 때는 옳고 그른 것이 존재합니다.
But there is definite right or wrong depending on which of the two camps you belong in.
그러니까 전체를 보지 못하고 부분만 보게 되면 이게 갈등이 생길 수밖에 없습니다.
So in that sense, the conflict arises because you are speaking, each group is speaking from a very limited perspective.
역사적으로 살펴보면요.
Historically speaking,
옛날에 주시들은 자기들만을 중심으로 해서 하나님이 우리만을 구원한다 이렇게 생각했습니다.
the Israelites were the chosen people, in which only the chosen people were eligible to be saved by God.
그래서 이방인은 구원을 못 받는다고 했습니다.
And their dogma said that non-Israelites, non-Jews cannot be saved.
그러나 예수님께서 이방인에게도 구원이 있다고 하셨습니다.
Then Jesus came along and said even non-Jews can be saved.
그러나 그 당시 사람들은 이거 이해할 수 없었습니다.
To those people, to his people, they could not understand him.
그래서 예수님이 희생된 겁니다.
That's why he was killed, sacrificed.
그러나 지금은 그것이 더 훨씬 보편적이라고 이해합니다.
However, what he thought right now is much more universal.
오늘날 기독교인들은 자기들만 구원을 받는다고 말합니다.
So a lot of Christians today say only Christians can be saved.
그러나 지구 전체, 인류 전체 입장에서 보면,
But if you look at it from humanity's perspective,
이것은 굉장히 배타적이고 폐쇄적입니다.
that's a very non-friendly dogma.
보편적으로 보면 이교도에도 구원이 있다 이렇게 볼 수 있습니다.
Because from a universal perspective, even non-Christian should be able to be saved.
이교도가 볼 때는 너무 당연한 얘기예요. 이교도가 볼 때는 너무 당연한 얘기예요.
So from the outside perspective, then it's it's an obvious truth.
그러나 기독교인이 볼 때는 말도 안 되는 얘기예요.
But from a Christian perspective, it's ridiculous.
그러니까 이런 그 편견이, 그러니까 편견이라는 것은 어떤 자기가 경험한 것을 가지고 그것이 진리다라고 착각하게 되는 거예요.
So this dogmatic biases, by bias I mean you are trying to objectify what was your subjective experience.
그래서 그 밖의 존재들은 살 가치가 없다 이렇게 생각하는 거예요.
So from that bias perspective, you believe that people outside of your bias are not worth living.
그래서 지금 말씀하신 당신이 말씀하신 그런 현상이 생겨나는 겁니다.
That's why these lead to the phenomena that you just spoke about.
그것이 민족적인 것으로 편견을 갖든,
So the bias could be ethnocentric bias,
인종적인 것으로 갖든,
so nationalistic bias,
남성 중심적인 생각이든,
or gender-centered bias,
그게 종교적이든,
or religious bias.
그것이 무엇이든 자기 생각이 옳다는데 사로잡히게 되면 이런 현상이 생겨나게 됩니다.
So whenever you are attached to the thought that you are right, these phenomena happen.
그래서 우리가 한 발 떨어져서 이게 양쪽을 앞뒤를 같이 보라는 겁니다.
That's why we teach people to step back one step and look at on all different sides.
그들의 편견에 같이 대응해서 편견으로 대응할 것이 아니라
Instead of trying to attack them with this, come at the problem with the same bias and bring your own bias to the equation.
그들까지도 포함한 전체를 보라는 거예요.
Look at the totality that includes even their bias, no matter how distasteful it might be.
그러니까 그들이 틀린 것도 아니지만은
So they're not wrong per se,
그들이 옳은 것도 아니에요.
but neither are they right.
그들은 지금 눈을 감고 칼을 휘두르는 거예요.
They are blinded currently and slashing every which way
그래서 많은 사람이 다칠 위험이 있는 거예요.
and creating dangers for a lot of people.
장기적으로는 본인도 다치게 됩니다.
And in the long run, they themselves will be cut.
눈을 뜬 사람이 이 사실을 볼 때는
So when a non-blind, a person with open eyes sees the situation as a whole,
그를 미워하는 것이 아니라
instead of hating them,
그러나 다른 사람과 그 사람 자신을 위해서도 이거 멈추게 해줘야 됩니다.
you have to create a way to stop them, not for any others, but for they themselves.
분노로서 대응을 한다면
Instead of reacting with anger,
동일한 것입니다.
because then you are reacting at their own level.
그래서 예수님께서 분노를 넘어서서
So
그들의 그 잘못된 행동을 멈추게 해야 합니다.
So from Jesus, for example, we have to go beyond the anger and try to stop them from hurting themselves and others.
그러니까 내버려 두라는 것이 아니라
So I'm not saying just let them be and let them do whatever they want.
또는 같은 수준에서 대응하라는 게 아니라
Or I'm not saying that we should react at the same level.
그 눈을 뜨고
Open our eyes.
분노보다는 자비심으로
Instead of rage, we react, we approach it with a sense of compassion.
그를 응징하는 것이 아니라
Instead of punishing them,
그를 위해서도 이걸 멈추게 해줘야 합니다.
we are stopping the situation for themselves.
이런 관점이 지금 우리에게 필요한 겁니다.
And this is a perspective that we need to approach these situations.
이해가 안 되시면 다시 질문을 하시기 바랍니다.
So please go ahead if you have further questions.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate that, and I certainly agree with everything you've said about the biases and points of view. Still, sometimes, and I think maybe that's the difference is how we look at it, but sometimes we do have to act with force in order to stop someone. Yeah, we should be understanding and compassionate, but at the other, at the same time, if back to World War II, for example, if the world just sat by and let Nazis and Hitler and Japan do whatever they were doing, we would be all speaking German today. Those people, I don't want to call them evil, but that ideology would persevere. So yeah, I appreciate the fact that you said, yeah, we have to stop them. We have to oppose them. And I totally agree with you that we don't do it with hatred, don't do it at their level, but we still have to act. I think action is still essential to change the world for the better.
네, 저도 동의합니다.
And I do agree with you.
첫째, 그러나 가능하면 비폭력적으로 문제를 해결하면 좋습니다.
But first, I think it's better. The preferred method is the non-violent method.
우리가 간디를 존경하는 이유가 어디 있습니까?
The reason why do we respect Gandhi?
얼마든지 무장 투쟁을 할 수도 있지 않습니까?
because he had the option to go for violent demonstrations,
그러나 그는 다른 방법으로 승리를 했지
but
않습니까?
he won his triumph by using the other way.
우리가 만델라를 왜 존경합니까?
And why do we respect Nelson Mandela?
흑인의 입장에서는 그 보복을 해야 되지 않습니까? 백인들에게.
And from a black South African perspective, he was right to take revenge.
그러나 공존의 길을 찾았지 않습니까?
But he chose the path of coexistence.
우리가 그걸 잘못됐다고 말할 수는 없지 않습니까?
And we can't say that was a bad way.
그렇기 때문에 우리가 조금 더 넓은 눈으로 접근을 해야 합니다.
So I think it's important for us to bring a wider perspective to the
행동이
situation.
필요하다는 거 전적으로 동의합니다.
And I do agree full-heartedly that we need action to stop
그러나
the
그
situation.
행동이 꼭 무력적으로만 해야 되느냐 하는 것은 더 신중하게 검토가 필요합니다.
But that action need not be based on violence. And that's something we have to consider
그거밖에
deeply.
해결책이 없느냐?
Maybe is that the last option to us?
그것은 최후의 수단입니다.
Because violence should be the last option.
그리고 또 우리는 그런 수단을 만약에 쓴다면
And even if we have to engage in that last option,
이것은 잘한 건 아니에요.
we are not using the optimal option.
우리가 까르마로 친다면 과보를 받습니다.
Because from a karmic perspective, we will reap what we sow.
그것을 각오하고 해야 합니다.
And we have to engage in that options knowing that this will have karmic ramifications.
예를 들어서 말씀드린다면
For example,
호랑이가 우리 어머니를 물어 죽였다.
say a tiger bit my mother and killed her.
그렇기 때문에 내가 호랑이를 죽인다.
That's why I'm killing this tiger.
그것은 살생입니다.
That is actual killing.
불자는 그렇게 할 수가 없습니다.
A Buddhist should not do this. So,
근데 그 호랑이가 또 다른 할머니를 물어 죽이려고 한다.
but if you see that tiger trying to kill and eat another grandma,
그 할머니를 살리기 위해서는
but to save her,
이 호랑이를 죽일 수밖에 없다.
then you have no choice but to kill that tiger.
그때는 행동할 수 있습니다.
Then you can act in such a manner.
그러나 살인을 하지 않은 것은 아니에요.
But that doesn't mean that you didn't engage in a killing.
나는 호랑이를 죽인 과보를 받아야 합니다.
You have to be ready to accept the karmic consequences of you
즉
killing a
손실을
tiger.
감수해야 되는 거예요.
So you have to understand that there's some loss that comes with that action.
내가 이런 손실을 감수하더라도 이 할머니는 살려야 되는 거예요.
But even knowing the consequences, you have to act to save the elderly lady.
그래서 나는 손실을 감수하고 이 행동을 할 수밖에 없는 거예요.
And so knowing that you have no choice but to act in such a fashion, knowing that there's a loss that comes with it.
손실을 감수할 것을 분명히 알고 한다면 최소의 행동을 하게 됩니다.
So if there's a appreciation of the loss that comes with each action, then you choose a path which minimizes that loss.
Yeah, I understand and I appreciate that. I absolutely agree with you that revenge, and that's in the example, if the tiger already bit and killed somebody, taking another life doesn't really solve anything. So absolutely, and I also appreciate the perspective that you said. If you see an imminent threat, you need to act, but you also need to be aware of consequences of your actions. And I think if more people in the world really understood these principles and acted in such a way, it would be a much better world. So thank you very much.
네, 우리는 선의의 행동을 해야 합니다.
So we have to act out of goodness.
선의만 갖는다고 좋은 건 아니에요.
But just because we act out of goodness doesn't mean it's good.
거기는 행동이 필요합니다.
And just having goodness is not enough. You have to act on it.
세상이 움직이는 것은 힘에 의해서 움직이지 선의에 의해서 움직이는 건 아니에요.
Because force, actions drive the world, not your sense of good intentions.
좋은 세상으로 가려면 선의가 힘으로 작용해야 합니다.
So if you want to drive the world towards a better world, then your goodness must be expressed in actions.
근데 우리가 생각하는 악이라는 방법과 동일한 방식으로 대응한다면 역사적으로는 큰 차이가 없습니다.
But if you express your goodness at the same level as those who you think are evil, then from a historical perspective, you're no better than they are.
서로 보복한 것밖에 아닙니다.
It just becomes a matter of tit for tat.
각각의 입장에서는 정당하지만은
From your each perspective, respective perspective, you are in the right.
그래서 이것은 반복될 수밖에 없습니다.
Then you create a seed for endless repetition.
Thank you.
네.